happens to be a banking cartel. So that's what it is, and people understood that, and they understood that it is not, repeat, not an agency of the federal government. It is a private organization, which is a stunning reality. It certainly was to me. Most people find that hard to believe. But the Federal Reserve is a conglomerate or a cartel of private banks. And these banks were the bankers were so wise in their actions that they, back in 1910, they began the propaganda campaign to draft and create the Federal Reserve. And then in 1913, they actually passed it into law, it meaning the Federal Reserve Cartel Agreement. And there's a little history involved there. That's why I call my book The Creature from Jekyll Island, is because, not because Jekyll Island has a creature that comes out of the slimy lagoon or anything like that. It's worse. It's because the Federal Reserve comes out of this private, very secret meeting that took place on Jekyll Island, which is a real island off the coast of Georgia back in 1910. And it's made up of representatives of the largest banks in the United States with their connections, their brotherhood in the big banks in Europe as well. So it was done in secret, private organization of bankers coming together, agreeing not to compete with each other anymore, and to form like a labor union for plumbers or something like that. They going to regulate their economy, so make it cushy for the plumbers that they've got to pay the same rate to all plumbers or have to charge the same rate and so forth. And so you can't have any plumbers coming in and say, well, I can do that cheaper because he gets drummed out of the union if he does that. He's not in the union in the first place. So they formed this banking cartel on Jekyll Island, and that was the beginning of it all. And then they took this cartel agreement that they drafted among themselves to benefit themselves in the economy. They took it to Washington, and they took 3 years to convince the congressmen there and the senators that this would be a great opportunity for them to become statesmen and vote for it and stabilize the economy and all that sort of thing. When in fact it was a private cartel agreement. And I don't think many of those congressmen and senators really understood that at the time. They just thought it was a piece of legislation that they didn't understand, but surely the bankers understood it. And so they just eventually all buckled under, and they voted for it into law in 1913. So coming to the conclusion of this long ladder of information is that they have a cartel agreement to preserve and expand the power of the banks. A private agreement. They take it to Washington. They convince the politicians to pass the private agreement into law, called the Federal Reserve Act. Now, a private agreement suddenly becomes law of the land. And so, if you and I do not abide by the terms of the private agreement, we can go to prison. But it's not a government creation. It's a private creation. But the government just was stupid enough, these congressmen were idiots enough, to sign it into law and give it the power of the government. So it was a partnership, in another way of looking at it, between the politicians, the political scientists, and the monetary scientists. That's what the Federal Reserve is, a cartel and a partnership between the bankers and the politicians.